And thanks for joining us on the program. I am Precious Amayo. Now let's bring you updates from the U.S. and some of the decisions it has made in Africa. The United States has designated Muslim Brotherhood organizations in Egypt, Lebanon, and Jordan as terrorist groups, escalating Washington's crackdown on groups it considers rivals to Israel. The decision follows an executive order by President Donald Trump directing his administration to begin the blacklisting process. The U.S. Treasury labeled the Egyptian and Jordanian groups as specially designated global terrorists, while the State Department applied the more severe foreign terrorist organization designation to the Lebanese group. U.S. officials claim the groups support Hamas and operate under the guise of civic organizations while backing militant activity. The Muslim Brotherhood has rejected the accusations. Salah Abdel-Haq, acting general guide of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, denied any involvement in terrorism and said the designation lacks credible evidence. Now, joining me to discuss this is Global Affairs analyst Kachi Ononuju. He joins me virtually. Good to have you join us.
Thank you very much for today, and I greet your audience too.
So this is the oldest political Islamic organization over 100 years. They've been very much involved in activism in the Middle East. So what are your initial thoughts on this terrorist designation, and how significant is this?
The Muslim Brotherhood were responsible for the crisis you had in Egypt and the distrust of the governing caucus against the Islamic movement. The Muslim Brotherhood has been there for a very long time, so I really don't see anything new in what the U.S. is doing. It's simply understanding that for it to effectively fight Islamic violence, it has to not stay at a place and let the violence gather for too long before reacting. It understood that it made a mistake, allowing the Mujahideen some resting period, and that's how they were able to transmute themselves into the Al-Qaeda. And America had to go to Afghanistan to deal with the issue. So designating the Muslim Brotherhood this early as a terrorist organization means they can pursue them to anywhere they are if they are serious. So for me, this is nothing new. It's simply an escalation by Israel and the United States of their old Middle East crisis. They're now taking them global. And I don't see anything new in that or any cause for alarm.
And interesting you mentioned Israel, because for a lot of people some people who have followed this development, since the first time President Trump issued the executive order a month ago, for them, this is basically the U.S. or President Trump pandering to Israel and its allies in the Middle East. And as some say that it is also President Trump it's sort of vilifying those who are against its ideology and policies. How do you react to this?
You should understand what's going on right now is a multi-pronged issue. One, the U.S. playing to the emotions of the evangelical movement in the United States. That's pure U.S. policy and U.S. politics. And of course, the issue about Israel. Israel, for me, is not a state as per country, a nation. No. Israel, for me, is a military outpost of the United States. And so whatever threatens Israel threatens America's international military arrangements, most especially in the Middle East. So if they are now telling you that the U.S. will want to follow Israel to pursue the Muslim Brotherhood everywhere, it simply tells you it's nothing new. Israel has been known to historically preempt actions of going after its long-term rivals, or I would say enemies, for space and for control, and also what I would call for influence within the Middle East space. So it has always done this. It did this against Hezbollah in Lebanon. It did this against the Hutus. It's done this against the Islamic regime with the mullahs since Iran became an Islamic republic. Israel has done this. Israel has done the same thing everywhere. It has done it with the Gaza occupation, and of course, Hamas. There was a time when Israel was promoting Hamas as a strategy to divide the Palestinian resistance. And today it's going against Hamas because Hamas is probably overstepping its bounds, just the same way that the United States did promote the Mujahideen when the Mujahideen was primarily against Russia's play in Afghanistan. But later on, the United States saw it fit to go against the Mujahideen when it recruited itself from the Mujahideen into Al-Qaeda with Osama bin Laden at its help. So this has been a historical issue for both the United States and Israel. I don't see any new changes.
Let's talk about those new changes and how President Trump has always the prism from which he views foreign policy and how he makes those decisions. For some people, this has a religious coloration to it. Depends on the Muslim Brotherhood network you're talking about. Some of them have the mission or the vision of establishing an Islamic caliphate, in some of those Middle East countries, and that's what countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt, Jordan are really worried about. Even the UAE, that's what they are really worried about. And do you think that, for example, perhaps this decision made by President Trump has a religious coloration to it?
Well, you call it religious coloration. The US will call it a strategic security calculation going long term. Well, because those groups organize themselves as a religious entity, but of course they are terrorist organizations. So it's like when the United States came into Nigeria to deal with the Fulani problem. The Fulanis were also pretentiously playing their game as if it was a religious jihad. But no, it's an ethnic issue. It's the same thing with the Hezbollah. It's painted to look religious, but no, it's a political organizations. But they are violent in their strategies of seeking to gain political power. It's the same thing you saw in Nigeria. It is the same. There are no differences. Okay, people pretentiously using a religious platform to seek to advance their causes, but when you look at it underneath, these are political groups seeking to gain political control, but using religious noises, religious
for Nigeria, it is important we make the difference, or speak to the difference, because when you say Fulani, that's a whole tribe, and they are really good men and women within that ethnicity. But I also wanted to speak to the issues of sanctions that were imposed on the group. How do you think that would reshape their global networks?
Well, you see, this is another issue. Like I was saying in Nigeria, yes, these people will come from a particular ethnicity, just like the Hamas. The Hamas came from amongst the Palestinians. Like even the Hezbollah, also that's literally it means the party of God. It came from the occupation in the occupied territory, and then the Muslims leaving to go into Lebanon, and that's Hezbollah. So nobody ever starts these things on their own. They are not religious groups, no. But they use religion as a platform to do this. Like I was saying in Nigeria, the people you see doing the religious thing, even though it's not religious, these are political action committees seeking to advance tribal political interests. In Nigeria, Yorubas are Muslims. Yorubas are not the ones using Allah Akbar to kill other Nigerians. Hausas are Muslims. They're not the ones using that religious platform to kill Nigerians. You also see that you have Muslims amongst other Muslims across northern Nigeria, but they're not the ones doing this. The only people doing this are the Fulanis.
I would interrupt you there because just recently, one of the conversations being had in Kogi State, for example, is that a tribe was also mentioned as one of the major people who are responsible for the attacks in Kogi State, and they are not Fulanis. I just wanted to, we'll just hold the conversation there because I wouldn't want us to, Mr. Amanuju, we have sort of deviated from the conversation, and I wanted to sort of, just circle back. That sometimes this is really not about the tribe. This more has been about resource control than it has been about ethnicity. Thank you so much for your time. Global Affairs Analyst, Katrin Oluju.
Thank you for having me.